And you'll just find people with very, very varied results. Someone goes and picks, like, let's say, a bag of rice, and showing that you are open, for example, is a bag of rice upside down. Now, this woman, she's a very fine woman, goes, grabs the bag, puts it upside down. She wasn't even looking at whether she's putting it the right way up or the right way down or some shit. Maybe she might even be engaged or married. And then as she's busy walking around the aisles, she realizes that she's busy getting bumped by guys left and right.
The royal penis is clean, Your Highness.
Welcome to the Breakdown Podcast, where I talk about love, sex, and relationships from a guy's perspective, as well as a bunch of other guy shit. The man on the mic is a man who might find it hard to breathe if you've got that asthma. He is also a man who likes his women the same exact way he likes his yogurt. It is none other than your tall, dark, and mildly handsome man, Sir Denver B. I have come through to talk about love. And yes, I know it is not February the 14th, but guess what? I feel like we've been missing some love in the end. I'm coming through to give it. So whether you believe in it, whether you don't, y'all are gonna get a pretty nice dose of it for most of this episode. Well, yes, there's that, and then there's also the bit about like being broke, and then like the whole like single man thing. But I'm gonna get to that in a little bit. But all in all, like this is just love and dating. And considering that this is a Friday episode, it means that I do get to dive into the wonderful world of X to pull up a couple of tweets that I feel should be discussed and, broken down accordingly. And considering that this is the last episode of the season, before I go on break, it does kind of almost feel as though you shouldn't be sending, but you know what? Send them over. I still want those tweets sent through so that I can break them down accordingly. And for those of you all that don't know the drill, it's pretty simple, almost sounds like a song, and it goes like this. You see that tweet, you like that tweet, you want us to discuss that tweet, you send that tweet. You send it to the DMs of @BagakaTheD, which happens to be my personal Twitter handle, and I will take it from there and I will handle it accordingly. On Facebook and on IG, if it happens to be a screenshot, a screen grab, or if it ended up on a reel, then the place to send it to on Facebook is @The Breaktime Podcast, and on IG it is @TheBreaktime_podcast, and I will be more than happy to take it from there and handle it accordingly. Now, like I said at the beginning, this is all about love and a little bit of brokenness, a little bit of the single man experience. And when you bring those two together, you can create some pretty interesting dating experiences, which is why I want to kick things off by talking about dating. More like dating practices or dating practice, singular. Because apparently, Spain is having a bit of a resurgence in terms of dating, but in a very interesting way. And it's so successful that it's supposedly supposed to put all the dating apps to shame. And the most interesting part about it is, it's not like it's an app. It's actually a physical practice that people are doing, and it involves a fruit. Now, I don't want to give too much away. I'm just going to let the clip play, then I can get into my thoughts on it. So, without further ado...
The pineapple is changing the dating game in Spain. They're not using Tinder, Bumble, or any dating apps. They are going to a specific supermarket from 7 to 8 p.m. Look at how many people show up to this supermarket. So people that are trying to find love are going to this specific supermarket called Mercadona. Now, Mercadona is all over Spain, so this is happening across the country. And they are going from 7 to 8 p.m. So how do you know who's looking for love? Single people that want to find their other half grab a pineapple. They put it upside down in their shopping cart.
Estamos preparadas.
Once you have the pineapple, you head to the wine selection or the wine aisle. Once you get there, if you find someone that you like and they also have the pineapple upside down, you have to crash your shopping cart. If you're looking for a long-term relationship, people buy a pack of lentils because lentils last forever in your pantry. But if you're looking for a one-night stand type of thing, people buy lettuce because it goes bad quickly. So if you're in Spain right now and you want to find love, head to Mercadona from 7 to 8 and see what happens.
This is actually particularly interesting when you kind of think about it. Like, some people might look at this, or at least might hear this and be like, this is like a regression. Like, dating apps are supposed to solve shit like this, because essentially it's more or less the same thing, but you can do it from the comfort of your own home, and it's just swiping on a screen and shit. Except that that's not exactly what it is. Okay, it is, but I'm thinking about this whole resurgence, or at least this sort of regression in dating, and I'm like, it's actually not a bad idea. Like, don't get me wrong. Yes, it does seem like it is almost like a backstep in the time of us having Tinder and Bumble and other dating apps. But when you think about it, the one thing that those apps never really did was create good experiences on like a physical level. It was just a virtual experience. And you think about it, it's a very simple way, and it's actually something that's not bad for you, like from a health perspective, because if the worst comes to it, you'll just go and like buy a pineapple and eat it or some shit, and those are healthy and all. And to even make matters better, from what I hear, apparently this is actually a practice that's been happening for quite a long time, not necessarily in Spain, but among the LGBT. Now, while I was going through the comments, I actually found out that this is actually a practice that's been done, like not necessarily just by the LGBT, it's mainly done by swingers who learned it from the LGBT. And it's something that's been happening in the States for quite a long time, and it's been a pretty nice signal and all. And frankly, considering that it used to work for them then, it's actually not a bad idea. Plus, there's people that are busy talking about that particular supermarket opening in Portugal, and it seems to be working there as well. And you think about it, like, yes, it's a good practice for dating, but it's an even better practice for marketing. Like, let me just put on my marketing hat for a little bit, because I'm trying to think about this shit and imagine the number of people that go to buy groceries there trying to find love, and let's say they don't know about going at 7 or 8 p.m. and let's say maybe they don't know about the whole make sure you go between 7 and 8 p.m. and they decide to go at a different time on a different day, and they go and they do their shopping. At the end of it, like, that just means that there's people that are going to be shopping there basically all the time while they're busy trying to find love. And that's actually quite genius, because you are solving the whole issue of trying to get more people to come to the supermarket more and buy stuff by solving the dating problem, by creating a sort of space where people can go and date using particular signals. Like, that shit is absolutely impressive. The only thing is, I don't know if this is something that we can actually implement here in Kenya, because you're going to try that with one supermarket and every supermarket's going to try doing the same thing, because Kenyans like to copy shit. Then you'll find that if they try that shit in Carrefour with pineapples, you'll find that it'll be like a bag of rice at Naivas and I don't know, maybe chocolates or some other thing that would be considered an essential good at Quickmart. And they'll try to appeal to people who have money or are at least at a low to middle class level. Those that have a little bit more to spend but not too much, because a lot of the high class people might not attempt that. And you'll just find people with very, very varied results. Someone goes and picks, like, let's say a bag of rice, and showing that you are open, for example, is a bag of rice upside down. Now, this woman, she's a very fine woman, goes, grabs the bag, puts it upside down. She wasn't even looking at whether she's putting it the right way up or the right way down or some shit. Maybe she might even be engaged or married. And then as she's busy walking around the aisles, she realizes that she's busy getting bumped by guys left and right, sometimes even women, and they're busy looking at her and smiling, and she's like, what the fuck is wrong with everyone? Yet the truth of it is, people are busy trying to signal that they're open to dating her, and maybe the added things that they might put in the trolley might signify whether it's a one-night stand or whether it's something more long-term. So maybe if it's something like a one-night stand, maybe they can put eggs, or maybe if it's a married person and they want a one-night stand, they'll put eggs, so that you'll know if you are being gongewad, it'll be like the eggs, kind of like that. And when I kind of think about it, like, I feel like it'll cause quite a bit of commotion, then it'll seem like a pretty good marketing stunt, then it might not actually last long here in Kenya, because I feel like there's a lot of people that are willing to lie that they want something long term and then just go get some pussy and they'll want to move on, or they'll just go want to bang and then they'll judge the person based off of how good or bad the sex is and just move on. Which, when I kind of think about it, probably might not make it such a good idea here in Nairobi. But the fact that Spain has managed to pull it off, the fact that a supermarket chain has managed to pull it off, clearly means that we have a lot of hope in terms of saving the dating market or dating markets. It just depends on what corporation and what specific marketing campaign we'll have to use to pull people so that they can start interacting with each other. Now, with that said, I should move on to our tweets of this episode so that I can get into the whole life of interaction and love and dating and shit. So, on to our very first tweet of this episode, which is actually a response to another tweet where someone had said, and I quote, "Natalie Tawa single, Kibanja single, men, what is it that you want?" End quote. To which some guy decided to respond and said, and I quote, "The fact that they're beautiful doesn't mean their traits and behaviors align with what men want. Being beautiful isn't enough to keep a man, bruh." End quote. Okay, dude is saying the truth, and in as much as there may be some people that may want to refute it, for the most part the general idea of what he's talking about actually does carry quite some weight. And it actually does go back to something that I used to say back in high school. It was a philosophy I came up with like back when I was in high school. It's not like I used to talk to a shit ton of fine women or anything, but like it was just a philosophy I came up with while I was in high school. It was like, what, maybe 12 years ago, which was me saying that a woman's beauty is only good for the first 5 minutes. And I used to say that a bunch of times with like a couple of my close friends, and even just some guys whenever people would be talking about babes, and the whole like topic of, oh, this fine babe got cheated on, blah blah. And I used to talk about it like that. And for me, like during that time, I was like, you know what, a woman is beautiful for like the first 5 minutes, then after that it's whatever's between her ears. Like if she's a boring person, if she's a nice person, if she has an attitude towards you, if she's got a great personality or a shit one, like that's what will start to shine through after that. Because being beautiful is great, but it's not like the beauty is everything. And thinking about it now, it's something that isn't actually a particularly wrong thing. Now, don't get me wrong, it's not like the statement itself is ironclad and perfect or anything. I feel like it's better as a metaphorical term than a realistic one, because a fine woman can feed you a bunch of bullshit and you'll buy it for hours, days, weeks, and maybe months even. But over the years and with the accruing of knowledge and life experiences and shit, I figured I could probably tweak it and make it something that is not only just centered on a woman's beauty, but can be opened up a little bit more and have a little bit more depth to it. So I came up with this statement: your beauty is only good enough to get you through the door. What keeps you there has to go beyond that. And when I kind of think about it, it's actually a pretty smart statement, because not only does it encapsulate whatever it is that I said initially in a more metaphorical and much broader manner, but it also goes beyond the genders, because when you look at the idea of pretty privilege, it goes beyond the genders. And basically all that's been spoken about is pretty privilege. Like people will look at you and you're attractive and people will want you. But the moment, the pretty privilege sort of wears off, because it's a very momentary thing, people suddenly start to look for the substance in you. And if you don't have the substance, then you'll very easily get booted. You can very easily get trashed aside and treated like shit, because people now will look at you and they're like, this person is just a pretty face. So thinking about it, I feel like it is a pretty smart philosophy to have, or at least it's a very smart belief to understand, regardless of gender, such that you can build yourself and who you are internally a lot more and stop relying on your looks. And with that said, I am going to leave it at that and move it on to our very next tweet of this episode, which was posted up by a guy who said, and I quote, "Anyway, Twitter aside, stop breaking each other's hearts. Love is usually so beautiful. Why y'all choose to complicate it, I don't know." End quote. And if truer words haven't been spoken, like this whole thing of treating sex in a very transactional manner and seeing who bangs who and who bangs whose person, like this shit is just it's honestly just good for the drama that people can talk about and the gossip, but beyond that, it's not good for anything. Could you momentarily feel better because you're banging the person that is dating someone else and they're letting you do more shit than they let their partner do with them? Possibly, if you're into that kind of thing. But in the long run, like that shit doesn't help anyone. Like it does not help anyone. This life of who bangs who and who's banging whose person, just it's never really brought about more benefits than problems. Which is why, like, even with all the shit that I talk about in this podcast, even with all that I talk about in terms of love, sex, and relationships for all of these years, like, I feel like the principles to a good relationship can literally be boiled down to just 3 main principles. Literally, 3 main points. That's it. And the 3 main principles are: 1, treat your partner as best as you can treat them. 2, have your partner treat you as best as they can treat you. And 3, the two of you agree that whatever it is that's going to happen between the two of you, whatever it is that's going to happen that's going to affect either of you, whether individual or in the relationship, you agree that you are going to work it out together. So if you're going through some shit at work, if you're going through some shit internally, if you're feeling a little bit down mentally or emotionally, you all should come through for each other and just try to fill in and try to help the other person. Or at best, you guys can also just choose to work on things that can strengthen the relationship for the both of you. And when it comes down to it, like, at the very least, you'll have sorted out like 90% of your relationship problems. Literally, like 90% of your problems have been solved. And that's at the very least. A lot of people could probably say that this could solve all of your problems in the relationship, but I don't want to stretch things out. So at the end of the day, yeah, love is actually a very beautiful thing. If embraced, if nurtured, if worked on, and over time, you find that love is actually a very, very beautiful thing, which is why I talk about it, and I wish it for all of the people that listen to this podcast, and even the ones that don't. But then again, considering that we have narcissists and we have pieces of shit out here that probably do not deserve love, even though I can't really decide whether they do or they don't, I am going to leave it at that and move it on to our very next tweet of this episode, which was posted up by a woman who said, and I quote, "To those who say everything has advantages and disadvantages, what are the advantages of being broke?" End quote. Okay, now this one was a little bit tricky to think through. Okay, not really that tricky, but are there really advantages to being broke? I know there's people that are going to say no, but I actually have one or two. Now, first advantage of being broke, peace. Like, okay, I'm looking at being broke not from a situation where you're unable to pay rent, you have no money, you can't even survive, you barely have food to eat. I'm looking at it as someone who's on survival level. They can afford to keep themselves afloat in that they can pay their rent, they can feed themselves, and they have a place to sleep. And, maybe they can pay for like stuff like maybe internet, okay? Personally, I feel like you get peace in that people will not disturb you asking for money. People will not disturb you wanting you to do shit for them because you have money. And that's as opposed to people who make a lot of money or people who are famous, because people like those are constantly being called and texted and hit up by people that are just trying to make either quick buck off of them, they're trying to get some clout. You find that, people that are super rich in other countries, it's like people are trying to fight them so that they can make money off of damages and shit when they sue them. And it's like people are always kind of looking at you like a target. But when you're broke, you can very easily blend in. No one sees you. No one even knows what the fuck you're doing. People don't bother you. And that peace, in as much as, yes, sometimes it can be lonely, can actually be pretty good, Then secondly, you get to know people for who they are. Because most times you will not know who a person is up until you're asking for help from them and they owe you absolutely nothing. So, for example, like how people treat the subordinate staff, the cleaners, the security guards, the people who do the cooking, the people who do housework, like how you treat those people is a very clear reflection of who you are as a person, because you don't owe them anything. They're basically under you, so you can decide how you get to treat them. And in some cases, you actually have quite a bit of power that they can't even do shit regardless of how you treat them. So the way I see it, it kind of does afford you that. But for the most part, it's more cons than pros, because, like when you have money, you get a bunch of respect. People want to do shit for you because they want money. People will suck up to you, which is funny to see, but also it affords you certain luxuries and shit. And all of that shit's pretty nice. And you can afford shit which you like, which is also pretty nice. So under quite a lot of circumstances, I'll probably choose being rich over being broke. It's just that someone here thought that, we can't find advantages to being broke, and I just figured I'd give it. But with those advantages being put down on a very momentary slight situation, I'll probably say that you should chase the bag and try to be rich, because in the great words of Leonardo DiCaprio when he was on the movie The Wolf of Wall Street, there is no nobility in poverty. And with that said, I am going to leave it at that and move it on to our very final tweet of this episode and this season, which was posted up by someone who said, and I quote, 80% of single men are no longer interested in dating. They are not even trying. Why is this the case? End quote. And to answer this question, I kind of just need to give a particularly simple scenario. If you decide to tell a bunch of guys using, one of the best tools to communicate information, which is social media, that they're not worth shit if they're broke, and that they need to stack up some dough so that they can get a chance with the kind of babes that they'd want to be with, and you also give them access to a bunch of casual sex here and there, how many guys do you think are going to be like, you know what, I'm gonna go chasing a relationship and trying to get into one? Because I don't see that happening quite a bit. Like, when you kind of think about it, a lot of guys would probably be better off in relationships, but because they probably have access to easy sex or casual sex, or because they're being told that, they aren't worth shit until they make money, or they shouldn't be dating until they make money, then you'll find that a bunch of them are going to take a while before they do. Now, the ones that feel like they're too broke to date because they are told they need to make money, they go ahead, they make money, they get this abundance of pussy that's coming to them. Now, it becomes harder for them to now even attempt to date because they're looking at the opportunity to bag all of this pussy and the option to drop all of them who, for the most part, wouldn't have given him a chance while he was broke and just settle down with one woman just doesn't really seem to make sense. On top of that, why would you want to take on more responsibility in the name of commitment when you can have something that's less of that and a little bit more casual and even more momentary so it fits your desires at that particular time? Like, it seems like it would probably be a little worse of an option. And the reason I've said responsibility is because men process relationships like a responsibility. Like, you'll find that men are expected to take care of their woman throughout the relationship. And yes, women will be asked to take care of their man, but for the most part, not unless if it's in like the much smaller ways, you find that the only place where a woman is supposed to take care of a man is if he is incapacitated, sick, or injured. But besides that, it's usually the man that's tasked with the responsibility of taking care of the woman. So it is a responsibility for us guys. So what would make you think that guys would want to take on more responsibility when they don't necessarily have to? Then also, much as I hate to admit it, there's a lot of guys that don't really have the confidence to approach and talk to women. It's an art, it's a skill that needs to be mastered and practiced, and we're not getting that many chances because there's guys that are being called creeps out here, and being told no is not the worst thing that can happen to you when a woman doesn't like you. Like, it's way worse than that nowadays. Being told no is actually one of the more okay things. You can be called a creep and you can be looked at as a sex predator of sorts and have your name plastered up on social media so that people can cancel you. Hell, it can even get as bad as you trying to talk to someone that you like in the office. And in some companies, that shit is so sensitive that it could even get you fired. So, for the most part, you put all of those challenges in front of a bunch of guys. Do you really think these guys are going to be approaching women all that much? Yeah, thought so as well. Although, then again, I might be wrong about this, just the same I could be wrong about any of the other things that I've said on this episode, so I want your thoughts on it. The DMs are open. On X, it is at Bagaka the D. On Facebook and on IG, it is at the Breaktime Podcast and the Breaktime_podcast, respectively. Thank you so much for listening all the way through this episode and this season. I hope you all get to listen to the shortened episodes when they come starting next week, and I will catch you guys on the next break.
But what I believe is that if you put a pastor and a prostitute in one room, one is likely to convert the other.